One of the first things I noticed the first time I watched this movie was during the opening credits. Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt's names are displayed over one another. I originally thought this was a lazy oversight or just some lack of attention to detail because it's confusing to show the names over the opposite man. But I later realized by doing this, it symbolizes how their characters' lives are intertwined, and it references how Cliff stands in for Rick as his stunt double. The cast includes actors spanning 9 decades. Clu Glueger was born in 1928. Bruce Dern was born in 1936. Al Pacino, 1940. Kurt Russell, 1951. Brad Pitt, 1963. Leonardo DiCaprio, 1974. Emile Hirsch, 1985. Margot Robbie, 1990. And Julia Butters, 2009, but technically 1928 to 2009 is only 81 years, so although we see actors born throughout 9 decades, it's more accurate to say their lives span only 8. In the scene when Sharon Tate goes into the theater to watch her movie, The Wrecking Crew, we get to see clips of the actual film, meaning the real Sharon Tate made a posthumous cameo appearance. Another nod to the real Sharon Tate is how she puts her feet up on the back of the seat in front of her and we see how dirty the bottoms are. That was intentional, not only being a Tarantino thing, because apparently the actress just hated wearing shoes and would avoid doing so whenever possible, sometimes even putting rubber bands across the tops of her feet to make it look like she had sandal straps. And she would do that when going out to eat or other places where there was a no shoes, no shirt, no service type policy. She's even on the Wikipedia list of famous barefooters, which I didn't even realize was a real thing. So Tarantino wanted authentically dirty dogs, prohibiting her from ever washing her feet during production.
My feet were dirty because I'd been walking around set. They stayed dirty in the movie because Quentin said, don't clean them. It was like, no, it's real, keep it.
And although she's a dirty hippie seen walking barefoot down the street and on top of and inside of trash dumpsters, Margaret Qualley's feet seem a bit cleaner. It's rare to see improvised scenes in a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Actors aren't there to riff, they're there to say my dialogue. When actors improvise, if they're not just adding ums and ahs, or they're not adding cuss words, that is called writing. And that is not what you hire an actor to do. If their riffing is genius, then I'll listen to them.
On that note, Leonardo DiCaprio ad-libbed the scene where he forgets his line while filming as Caleb Dakota, because Rick Dalton is supposed to be somewhat of a limited actor, but DiCaprio is one of the best, so it helped to quote-unquote forget his line to stay in character.
Maybe, God damn it, I fucked this whole thing up. Sam, I did, I fucked this whole thing up.
He also improvised the subsequent angry rant in his dressing trailer. Then another improv moment came from Brad Pitt when he says,
"You're Rick fucking Dalton. Don't you forget it."
That was inspired by what some other actor said to him early in his career back in the 90s when he wasn't yet one of Hollywood's most prominent actors. Alright, you see this huge self-portrait Rick has in his garage? Well, during pre-production, Tarantino visited the home of late actor Lee Van Cleef to scout locations for filming, and while he was in the garage, he found a giant poster of Van Cleef's face hanging on the wall. He thought it was kind of weird, but interesting enough that it inspired him to have Rick keep a similar self-portrait in his driveway. The movie covers about 48 hours total. Approximately 36 of those are in February and the remaining 12 are in August. Specifically, the movie begins on Saturday, February 8th, 1969. Nice. And if you do a quick check on a real calendar, you'll see February 8th, 1969 was indeed a Saturday. When Cliff gets home on this first night, he eats his dinner in front of the TV. A box of highly nutritious Kraft macaroni and cheese and a can of fictional beer, Old Chattanooga Tennessee Lager, 7.4% alcohol, also apparently featured in Death Proof. And you know his dog Brandy. Well, her real name is Sayori, and she was the only actor to win an award at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival where this movie first showed. Tarantino accepted the award on her behalf.
The female dog in it was kind of difficult to do this and that, but we kind of did our best. But it wasn't until I was editing the movie that I realized Hey, she's kind of a good actress.
And the brand of food Cliff feeds her, Wolf Tooth Dog Food, is a fictional product from a fictional company in the Tarantino universe. It's a good source of vitamin D, and their slogan is good food for mean dogs. He feeds her 2 cans, one raccoon flavor and the other one was rat flavor. Other flavors shown when he opens the cupboards are bird and lizard, not to mention whatever flavors in this orange can, which we can't see because of the way it's turned. And even though the food company isn't real, you can buy Wolf Tooth merch on Etsy, and there actually is a company called Wolf Tooth that makes high-end precision bicycle components. And I've got to say, it just bothers me how disgusting this dog's food bowl is. Absolutely atrocious. Now, I know Cliff is kind of living in squalor here, but he's got running water. So at least wash the bowl out, dude. You know what I mean? But maybe it's not dirty, maybe it's flavor seasoned. And now Brandy as a canine character is a female doggo, but obviously Sayori had a stunt double just like Cliff, because at the end when she jumps up on the door to go into the bedroom of Rick's house, we can see this is clearly a male dog. Anyway, back to Cliff's dinner scene. The show he's watching is called Mannix. The episode is titled Death in Minor Key, and in real life, this episode did air for the first time on February 8th, 1969, so it lines up perfectly. The next day, shooting began for the Lancer pilot they were talking about, but unlike the real-life episode of Mannix I just mentioned, the pilot for Lancer actually aired on September 24th, 1968. So it's a funny little bit of artistic licensing to show this episode being filmed in the 1969 setting of the movie, when in reality it was filmed a year or so earlier and had already aired on cable TV. Now, I skimmed through that episode of Lancer to compare and contrast the Tarantino version, and it looks like he did recreate the bar scene where they're talking at the table, but what I really wanted to see is if there was that kidnapping scene where he throws the girl on the floor and does the triple alliteration, but as far as I could see, there was no scene quite like that in the show. Another small change from the real-life ways things happened is that Rick Dalton plays the main villain, Descatu, but his name in the real show was Depardieu. So we know Rick is wrong about the pronunciation of the character he plays on Lancer.
Thought it was pronounced Caleb Dakota.
But the name is actually mispronounced by everyone else as well. Assuming it's a French name, it should be pronounced Decoto, which means hillside or of the hillside in French. And while I'm talking about old TV shows, at one point Rick and Cliff get together to watch an episode of The FBI because Rick guest starred in it. This was another actual show that aired on ABC from 1965 to 1974, and the hijacked army truck seen in the recreated shot was the same exact truck used in the original show, just cleaned up with a fresh coat of paint to restore it to its former glory. Due to the way Bruce Lee is portrayed, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is not allowed in China. But they did say that if he edited this scene out, they would give approval in the country. Tarantino publicly refused to make those edits because fuck that. And besides the Chinese government, actor and retired NBA superstar Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was strongly offended by Bruce Lee's portrayal. Probably because he felt a connection from working with him on his film debut, The Game of Death, which ended up being Lee's final film. But on Joe Rogan's podcast, Tarantino said he thinks Bruce's daughter Sharon Lee is the only person who has the right to be offended by his depiction as an arrogant blowhard prick.
I can understand his daughter having a problem with it. It's her fucking father, all right? I get that. But anybody else, go suck a dick.
And while we're on this scene, when Bruce Lee goes flying into the car, which is a Lincoln by the way, we can see the rear door is already partially smashed a couple frames before he hits it. Tarantino had been invited to the Playboy Mansion on several occasions by Hugh Hefner himself, so after his death in 2017, Tarantino was still able to use his connections to film the party scene on location at the mansion. The only problem, however, is that in 1969, the Playboy Mansion was not yet in California. Hugh Hefner lived in the first mansion located in Chicago until 1971. And something else that doesn't match up with the setting of the 60s is when Cliff gets off the highway to go home, we see a clearly visible numbered exit sign on the off-ramp. But California didn't start numbering their exit ramps across the state until 2002, even though there were a few put out in Los Angeles in 1970. This sign still wouldn't be up for at least another year. Way to fuck things up, Quentin. Vendors on Hollywood Boulevard initially disputed fitting the area with period facades to bring back the look from the 1960s, but after shooting Wrapped, a lot of the people who were making these complaints requested the aesthetic changes stay because they grew to like them over time. It's hard to think of someone like Leonardo DiCaprio being starstruck, but Luke Perry was one of his biggest idols as a teen. I wonder if he asked for his autograph. Margaret Qualley's character is partially based on former Manson family member Ruth Ann Morehouse, who went by at least 10 different aliases, mostly different last names, but she was never known as Pussycat. It's possible Tarantino came up with this name by combining her character from another real-life Manson member, Catherine Kitty Lutzinger. We see from the street sign as Rick pulls into his neighborhood, he lives on Cielo Drive. Cielo is Spanish for heaven, and since the street is uphill, you could technically say whenever he goes home, he's figuratively going up to heaven. Before the movie came out, there were super rumors going around about the ending on Wikipedia. Among the ridiculous lies and misinformation, it was reported the movie ended with the Manson family breaking into Sharon Tate's house, and then Bruce Lee was there with Cliff and Rick to show up in the nick of time to save them, and then Sharon was also there kicking butt with martial arts skills. But then somehow during the attack, Cliff gets wounded and he would have died. So once the movie came out and all that nonsense was exposed, Wikipedia editors squabbled for a while about the ethics of releasing unreleased movie information. Speaking of which, I don't want to start no rumors myself, but as of the making of this video, the adventures of Cliff Booth continue in a movie that hasn't come out yet. Although I certainly am hyped for it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back as soon as I can with more content. Until next time, stay cool and always keep punching out there. Aloha.